Dinner for shoes, please. Hello, and welcome to a very special episode of Dinner for Shoes. Today's Dinner for Shoes episode involves two special guests. One happens to be my wedding planner, Julia Ferrigno, and then the other one happens to be Miss Hayley Paige, who I'm sure you know about if you watch Say Yes to the Dress. I'm sure you know about if you just tune into the wedding industry in general. Maybe you're a bride, maybe you just love wedding dress designers. Hayley is incredible. Honestly, when I look at Hayley's wedding dresses, I see every single dress infused with personality. I think she designs for someone who is creative and whimsical. And I think each of her dresses tells a story. She also has her own shoe line now. She also created a Girl You Might Know foundation after she had to legally fight for her name, the name of her brand, back. Funnily enough, my wedding planner, Julia, introduced me to Hayley and her story because Julia had done her own YouTube episode for her own podcast way back when Hayley was going through her legal issues and she wanted to enlighten brides that if they were buying a Hayley Paige wedding dress at that time, they actually were not supporting the designer herself, but the big conglomerate brand that owned the rights to Hayley's name. Now, Hayley has come such a long way. She basically has restarted her brand. She is a bride herself. She's getting married hopefully in 2026. You're going to hear from her and you're going to hear from my wedding planner today. We're going to talk about all of the tea, what a wedding planner wishes that a wedding dress designer knew and what a wedding dress designer wishes that a wedding planner knew and what they actually don't give a shit about. It was so cool as a bride to be listening to them, learning from them. Honestly, they are experts. Obviously, this is not my field. So I really had so much fun. And I'm going to do a quick alpha behind the shoes and just let you know what I'm wearing. And then we'll dive into the conversation with Hayley and Julia. Basically, I decided to go for a dress. This is a champagne dress that I've had for such a long time. And I always have thought that it felt a little bit bridally, but I was like, yeah, but you'll figure out somewhere to wear it. And it's got this like resort feel to me just because it's high-low and it has this knot at the waist. And I think that makes it a little bit more playful. Maybe like I'd wear it as a vacation dress. And it has some really subtle beading that kind of adds like a pop of gold. So I thought it would call attention to my engagement ring. I'm wearing pearl drop earrings that are asymmetrical, also like my engagement ring. And then another matching pearl ring. I really kept it simple with the accessories. This is my Nina clutch bag. I actually wear this to so many weddings. I really like the neutral colorway that it is, and it goes with my dress so well. And it matches perfectly to these Margot block heel slingbacks, which I think are just like really classic. I think I chose them because I want the conversation with Julia and Hayley to kind of like take center stage, and I wanted to let them both shine because when it comes to the wedding industry, they are the experts. They know best. So Trish is ready. Trish is settled in. Let's take a listen to our conversation. Hayley, you just were on CNN for that Taylor Swift segment. Julia and I both saw it, and we were like very excited for you. And I just wanted to know, like, what went into your inspiration when you were sketching that? Especially, I'm assuming all three of us are Taylor fans. Like, obviously she's such a storyteller and her wedding dress is gonna tell such a story. So where do you start with something like that?
It was definitely a fun lift, and I just felt so honored to be contributing simply from the fact of it being a documentary and about wedding culture. But I'm a fan of hers as well, and she's somebody that's really inspired me in my own legal journey. So I really approached it the same way that I would any typical bride. I thought about her as the human being first, and really tried to reduce the noise around it all because obviously everyone's so excited and everyone's going to look for Easter eggs and what does this mean and the spectacle of it all. But at the heart, it is such a sentimental thing and a personal journey that she's going to be going on. So I wanted the dress to really feel like her, the person, not her, the entertainer or her, the mystery maker or anything like that. So I stripped it down a bit.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I feel like whenever she does wear kind of more designery looks like Versace and like she's on the red carpet, like it seems to always be an Easter egg of some sort, but that's probably not like what she's going to opt for her actual wedding day because she is such like a fairy tale person, you know?
Yeah, and she's made a lot of her life inspiration for her work.
Yeah.
And so it'll be refreshing, I think, for her to approach it from just a girl getting married standpoint. So I tried to think on that in terms of the silhouette and what would look beautiful on her shape and just represent her sentimentally.
I love that. It's beautiful. I want to kind of open up the conversation too to expand on that because like celebrity weddings are just such a spectacle and I think that they kind of give brides like as you guys both know I'm a 2026 bride this like false expectation when you see it, right? Like brides are literally wearing like 42 outfits in one wedding weekend and every little detail is like super super special and thought out. So how do you think that like all the celebrity weddings now are kind of symbolic for what actual weddings are like and how do you feel like they're just out of touch and maybe you find that your own brides that you work with are kind of like creating these unrealistic expectations around it because of them.
Yes, there's definitely a bit of content overload, or I would say content fatigue at this point. And there's a tendency to feel like what we're seeing from a visual standpoint is all performative. And it's all for the content sprint, you know. But if you really think about the history of weddings, it's always been about documentation.
Yeah.
And, you know, going way far back into history, you see wedding photography. It's almost where it started, you know, is just like kind of time stamping the moment. And so now it's a bit more on steroids, of course, just because we have so much more at our fingertips in terms of how we can document. And I think that there's a tendency for overproduced weddings or content heavy weddings or celebrity weddings to really distort the scale.
Yeah.
But not necessarily the meaning. You know, I don't think we should take for granted the fact that somebody who really goes in heavy on the content for their wedding is lacking meaning. I think that's oftentimes just a judgment we have just because it's like, okay, enough, we get it, you got married. But at the same time, it's like people should do what they want to do and feel totally free to break the rules and just want to do what makes sense to them in terms of their life. And yes, maybe there's some branding element to it, but I think the moment you get married and you're sitting down with your partner and you're like, we are going to do this, I think it's just important for you both to be on the same page and feel like you're going into it as a team and that these are our non-negotiables, these are our goals, and here's the experience and the feelings we want to have first and foremost.
For sure.
I think authenticity is a really important theme with weddings. And it's really, as a planner, I feel like I'm constantly trying to remind my couples to be authentically themselves because there is so much content out there that's going to try to make people feel like they need to do what's trendy or, you know, what they saw so-and-so post on Instagram. And it's like, you can, and that's encouraged if you want to. But if it's not authentically you, then let's be authentically you.
Yes.
So I kind of have an unpopular opinion when it comes to even like Taylor Swift's wedding. I, as a fan, obviously am dying to see what she does and I want to see it as a fan. But as a wedding planner, I actually hope she keeps it all 100% private because that's who she is as a person. You know, it's like she's one of the reasons I'm a huge fan of her is because she's so authentic and down to earth. And I feel like she's kept a lot of her life private. Again, as the fan, I was like, why didn't we get more juicy deets on her relationships in her Eras Tour documentary? But then again, like I understand, like she's a human and we need to respect that. And again, it's my brides and my couples. I want them to be completely authentic. And if that means being private, that's fine.
I totally agree with that.
It should feel more like a secret you're keeping as opposed to a plot twist that you're announcing.
Yeah.
So I agree with that. And you know, what will be of the media response and the reaction to it. It's going to become its own animal. Everyone's going to treat it as a spectacle, even if it was something that they really tried to keep in-house.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Hayley, you're getting married too. So how do you feel about that? Because I feel like you do share so much of your life on Instagram and you love being authentically you for your followers. Are you like gonna share, or do you feel like you do want to keep it kind of more private?
I do feel the need to share because of the reality of what I do for a living. I mean, I'm in this space, I've made dress design part of my identity for sure. So there are things I'm a lot more comfortable speaking on, especially in planning the wedding. At the same time, my fiance and I have really been through an interesting journey together as a couple, because when we met, we were really more of that couple, like sharing our bake-offs and being in front of the camera as a couple. And over the past 7 years, Conrad's actually taken a much quieter and anonymous approach. He doesn't really like being on social media as much anymore. And so for me, it's actually been kind of refreshing because I don't have to worry about, oh, I need to film this, or, oh, I need to get this. We can kind of just live our life as a couple. And then I can pick and choose the things I want to share on my end, which is typically creative based or something, hopefully providing a real takeaway in the wedding space. So that's where I'll kind of stay in my lane, I think.
Yes.
As your fan, Hayley, I'm dying to know, did you pick a venue?
Oh my gosh. So no, we are between two right now. And it is which one's going to get it? I mean, I don't know how the process is for everyone's different, I know. But for us, it's actually been a really tough decision. I assume that once we have this, everything else will snowball, right?
Yeah. Let's talk about the dress a little bit. Just because as someone who's in the fashion industry, I've been watching wedding dress trends change and stick around. And obviously I love so many of them, but a wedding dress is supposed to be timeless, right? And Hayley, you're very good at designing for someone who is self-expressive, which I love, because I dress like that. I like unique details. I like telling a story with my outfit, right? So how do you continue to put all of these really exciting details and elements into your dresses while also paying attention to trends? Do you completely disregard them, or do you kind of try to go with the motions a little bit?
Yeah, I thank you for that assessment. I appreciate it, because it's always nice to hear that is your interpretation of me as a designer. It's really helpful. But I would say I'm not of the mindset that dresses have to be timeless. I think that they are actually timestamps more so, because they always are a reflection of where you are in your life. Mm-hmm. And I see that from almost a personal experience, because I have been married before. And there's no way I would design what I designed before now, in terms of who I am as a woman and what I'm attracted to in terms of textures and colors and things like that. And I think that's the beauty of design, is it's constantly moving and it's constantly reshaping and shape-shifting according to what you love. And that makes the landscape really fun as a designer and a creator, because as long as you don't lock yourself in, but you keep in mind your point of view, it's super limitless and it's forever changing. So are the muses, so are the inspirations. Mm-hmm. And having been in the industry for a good period of time, and then I had to take a little hiatus and then come back,
which we'll talk about.
I feel like it's given me this really cool perspective on the heritage and the history of wedding design, because I'm seeing right now, in terms of quote unquote trends, I'm seeing the 90s. I'm seeing the 90s and the 80s, and this return to the basque waist and 100%. The heavy corsetry and the tons of layers and the heaviness of the dresses. And it's so fun to see it, because it is, again, cyclical, but you start to homogenize a lot. And then you get these little nooks that you can explore and become really offbeat in terms of your aesthetic, because there's just so many types of brides out there now. And I think the rebellion is not so much loud as it is just making it your own rules. Yeah. So it's nice to have an eclectic mix of dresses to choose from.
For sure. Yeah. And I'm glad you said that, because I ended up having the experience that a lot of brides talk about. I feel like everyone says this. Everyone told me who got married, when you go find your dress, like the dress that you end up in is going to be not what you expected to end up in. And I did go look at dresses, and I went like knowing, okay, that dress will look good on my body type. And I tried it on, and then the assistant that was working was like, I kind of am getting a sense of your style. Will you just try this one on? And I was like, oh, I saw that one on your website. I don't really think that that's my style. I tried it on, and when I left, that's when like dress A went like this and dress B, I could not stop thinking about it. And it really reminds me of my venue, where I am in my life right now. I was previously engaged, planned an entire wedding. My wedding was called off 2 months before the wedding. And the dress that I was going to wear to that wedding was so simple. And it was also, this is interesting, it was an abusive relationship, and I was really silenced in that relationship. And so when I tried on this dress, it's just a little bit more exciting, and like it almost feels like I'm like blooming out of it. It's like speaking to where I am in my life right now.
I just got goosebumps, Sarah.
Yeah, like, and that's what my best friend said to me. She started crying, and she was just like, you would never wear that dress that you were going to wear to that wedding now. That dress didn't, like, it didn't say anything about you. Like, it was, you know, so I agree. And I also feel like a dress should speak to where you're getting married and like what story the wedding is telling, you know? So that's why I like that your dresses are just really unique in that way.
Thank you. I'm so sorry that you've had to go through that journey, but I feel like the perspective on it has allowed you to just really own yourself, and the fact that expressing it through the dress is even better. That's what you hope for anyone, is that they feel the connection and confidence in what they're wearing.
Totally.
As a planner, the dress is has a very important role, because at the end of the day, it is the one thing that the bride typically chooses for themselves that no one else gets to have a say on. And it's also something that it always comes up as that moment of, let's put the dress on. So one of my favorite moments as a wedding planner, when I get to experience that moment, it's so special because it's the first time they actually look at themselves as a bride. And I always try to make it a moment on the wedding day where we can kind of have a special moment to actually take that in, because it is such an important moment. And I always try to remind my couples, you know, it's like, hype them up. Like, you look absolutely beautiful. And I say that to all of my couples authentically, of course, because they are genuinely beautiful and look perfect in whatever dress that they choose because they chose it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, because like all of my brides have very different styles, but every single style, as long as it reflects who they are, it's perfect for them. And that's why I love what I do, because I see so many different types of people, so many different types of weddings, and I get to just live vicariously through everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like the dress should really meet you where you're at and not ask you to become someone else.
100%.
The dress fits you. I always say you don't have to fit into the dress, but that's perfectly stated, Julia.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because I'm curious. I actually like that question a lot. Like, kind of, what do planners wish that wedding dress designers understood about that moment and the dress, and what, really, and vice versa. Yeah, because I mean, that's so interesting. Like, normally, wedding dress designer and wedding planner do not talk. Sure. Like, there's a bride in between. So talk to each other about this a little.
So for me, it's not so much about the design of the dress, because again, like, as we've already covered, you know, that's going to be very special and unique to the bride. But for me, what I wish people thought about a little bit more, and I don't know, Hayley, you're going to have to educate me on if this is like a designer question or like an alterations thing. But for me, the logistics of the dress are so important, because the amount of time that it takes to put on a dress, the amount of time it takes to bustle a dress, the amount of time it takes to take off a dress, like all of those things impact a timeline. And as a planner, you know, every single minute on a wedding day is such precious time. And some of the hardest parts as the planner on a wedding day is when my couples are struggling to put their, you know, to bustle their dress. And now all of a sudden we've eaten 30 minutes into dinner. And it's like such a simple thing that a lot of people forget. So my solution for my couples is always like, take a video of the bustle, think about that in advance, have very strong communications with your alterations team to understand how it's going to be bustled. Hopefully your alterations team is labeling and numbering and all of those good things so that it's very clear to anyone that's looking how this works. But the reality is that doesn't always, you know, happen. So then I'm always the one on the wedding day coming in, trying to figure it out and get them out the door as quickly as possible. And I shouldn't be admitting this to a wedding dress designer, but I've been known to have to ruin dresses in certain ways to kind of like force bustles and safety pins and
what
I gotta do to get that bride on the dance floor, right? Because at the end of the day, at that point, that's what matters. But yeah, I think for me, just understanding the logistics would be a helpful start. And one thing that I love that I wish all brides did, and maybe this could be something that you think about, Hayley. I love the concept of detachable trains and things that are easy and quick instead of having to bustle, because then it's just like, okay, we're ready for the after party. Cool. Take this off. We're ready. Anything that can happen like this, I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah, the interchangeability. I feel like that's, again, a very popular and growing attraction for brides, is to kind of have two looks in one and something that's just really easy to manage on the day. And you brought up such a great point about bustles, because when we design a dress, I do not think about a bustle. It is actually none of my business how it's bustled, because that's done during alterations, unless I'm doing a custom project. But for the most part, I designed the dress with this idea of grandiose in mind. She is a huge moment of the wedding day, and I just want it to be as fabulous and grand as it can be. And then alterations has to deal with, how is this going to be bustled and not affect the dress? And a lot of times they do forget those really simple ideas of preparing yourself for the wedding day so that you don't have to do it on the wedding day and figure out the mechanics of it, or who's going to be doing this. So like you said, taking a video during alterations of how it's bustled. And most of the time the alterationists are scientists. I mean, they are real creators, and they get in there and know exactly where things should go with easy loops and ties. But if you don't know where to look for it, because they try to make it invisible, and they don't want to impact the look of the dress, even with the bustle. So that is something, hands down, great tip to tell your brides is figure out who's bustling your dress, and did they watch the video during the fitting to make sure they're doing it right. And they're typically so easy if you know how to do it.
Yeah. And the compromise between ease and how well it will work. Because sometimes that American bustle, while I love her, give me one loop. Let's do it. Let's get you on the dance floor. If that one loop doesn't stay, then that was my wedding dress, actually. My bustle did not stay at all.
It didn't stay. The thread ripped. Yeah, it's usually like a swing tack, the way it's done. And so if it's on like only a couple layers of tulle, it can either rip or come undone. I mean, if you get wild and fun on the dance floor, you need to enjoy yourself. You don't feel like your bustle's going to come undone.
Yeah, I was. We had fun. At one point, I just said, I don't care. I'm just having the time of my life, and it is what it is. But
great attitude.
You have to have that kind of attitude, because things will go wrong. And if the thing that goes wrong is your bustle not staying done, then I think it's a win.
Agreed.
Totally. So many little things probably go wrong at every wedding that like you just forget about after the wedding. I mean, I wouldn't know. I haven't had the wedding yet. But Julia, do you feel like in those moments like a huge weight of responsibility when like you're there trying to pin up the bustle and the bride is like, I need my bustle to work?
Yes and no. I think when I first started, I definitely felt a little bit more of that like stress and pressure.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it's more of the rush of adrenaline of like, this person's relying on me, and that's really exciting to me. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily a weight, but it is definitely a big part of the job. And why I love what I do is to make sure that like I am the calm in a crazy day of making sure that everything, even if it doesn't go smoothly, that it's perceived to be going smoothly, or the bride feels calm. Because that's really, at the end of the day, what matters is how my couples are feeling. For me, it's not about what happens. It's how are my couples managing through it, and how can I help them manage it better if, something comes up. So yeah, that's why a lot of times, like, I do manage the timeline and have to make a judgment call. Like, are we safety pinning the crap out of this dress and just getting you on the dance floor? Or are we going to take another 10 minutes to try to figure this thing out? And I've had to face that a few different times, and you just kind of weigh pros and cons.
Yeah. And Hayley, do you, like, as a wedding dress designer, if you saw that your dress was altered in some way, or like a bride had to do some quick fix thing, like, how does that make you feel, I guess?
Oh my gosh. I honestly detach a bit, because for me, the minute a bride says yes to the dress, it becomes her dress.
Yeah.
And that's just something mentally I've always
I love that.
felt is a healthy thing. And what I do as an artist is give it to her and then she makes it hers, right?
Sure.
So I don't mind customizations or little personal additions or, you know, what the alterationist suggests doing based on the bride and what she likes, because part of it is customizable in the alteration stage. That's when the dress is really being fit to you perfectly. Right. And so if there's things you're noticing in the mirror and you're communicating with the seamstress or the alterationist, like how this is working, the tailoring, like, I think that's where a lot of the magic comes in, and it's up to them to kind of decide what looks best and what's going to work best on that day. And there have been weddings I've personally been at where, you know, I've had to come in and help the bustle or fix the bustle or do something like that, even if it wasn't my dress. And there's been moments where we just let the dress go.
Yeah.
Like, you're the princess, expect no one to step on you or anything like that. And just like have your magic moment with the train in full effect, you know?
Yeah.
But the dress gets dirty, you know, there are moments, there are things, you have to live in it. You have to be in it. And so you kind of just got to let it go at some point once you get your pictures and you've had your moment.
I had a bride in a huge rainstorm, and her wedding, she wanted to do sunset photos on the beach. And she was kind of like apprehensive about it. But she asked me my opinion because she was like, she valued my opinion, I guess. She wanted me to be able to tell her what to do, I guess.
Yeah.
So I told her, go for it. Like, it's your wedding day. Go for it. Like, the dress gets a little dirty. Like, that's okay. This is your day. And the dress is an expression of that day. And if the bottom gets all destroyed, that's okay. And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you said for me to do that because that's what I wanted. And I was like, well, then we're definitely doing it. Like, let's go. Like, let's have fun. And they had a great time, and it was a great memory. And the dress got to be a part of it, even if part of the dress, you know, got a little dirty. But that's sometimes the beauty of it is, you know, let's really lean into that and enjoy that.
Totally.
Yeah, the dress lives a lifetime in that one day of love. It really is how it's the one dress, right? Or maybe there's a couple, but gotta live it up. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always been someone who thinks of clothing as like having this story, right? So like if the bride wanted to do that, and I'm sure the pictures came out like incredible, then that dress will always have that story with it, and it becomes part of the wedding, and it's just so cool. A lot of emotional like weight in a wedding dress, but I think that obviously it's important. And Julia, I think it's so great that like your brides trust you, and you probably feel that a lot where they're like, tell me what to do because you're going to have to make this call.
Well, it's a blessing and a curse because like I can also be a bad influence. So it's like, you know, ask me your opinion, but like only if you're willing to be influenced, you know, in a not so good way. No, but like I was also, my sister-in-law got married in Cabo, and she had this beautiful, expensive gown, like totally bedazzled, right? And I was the one at the end of the night as a guest being like, pool, like let's jump in the pool. And everyone kept being like, but her dress. And I was like, who cares? Like, jump in the pool. And I think it did take her mother to be like, you are not getting in that pool in that dress. So she compromised and was very smart and took the dress off, got into an after party outfit, and then jumped in the pool. So she still made it. But it was just funny to me how I'm definitely a bad influence when it comes to that. Like, I'm all about experiences over anything else when it comes to your wedding day.
100%.
I like it. Fun instigator.
Yes.
Sometimes, yeah.
I want to take a step back a little bit and talk about like, Hayley, how I learned about your story, which is basically through Julia. First of all, I don't know if you guys talked about this yet, but Julia, as a fan of Hayley, you made that incredible YouTube video about what happened with your name, Hayley. And I like did all this deep dive into your story and how you basically fought for your name back, which shouldn't even be a thing, right? And then you started A Girl You Might Know Foundation, which is incredible. I want to ask both of you how you feel that the wedding industry kind of like blurs the line between identity and corporate ownership, because I feel like this happens more than people know. And obviously, A Girl You Might Know Foundation helps to shed light on this issue. But I guess, Julia, do you find yourself steering brides in the right direction when it comes to like ethics, when it comes to this stuff? And Hayley, do you want to talk at all about what that experience was like and what you learned?
So I'll jump in real quick and then I'll pass it straight to Hayley because I feel like she's definitely more of the she's going to have a lot more to say about this one. But I think for me, I'm always guiding my couples based on what guides my moral compass. And I have a lot of vendors that I work with through the wedding planning process that I just know are mom and pop shops or really good people and, people that run their businesses, that have families. And, I get to know my vendor teams, right? And so a lot of times it doesn't come up as much for me because the people that I'm recommending are already people that are like more local, businesses. There are some businesses out there for like month of clients that I'm not guiding them, where they get the Instagram ads and the social media ads of these big companies that are a little bit unethical in terms of like photography. Like, it's a photographer that outsources and doesn't actually like, have a say in your day at all. And it's just, and I actually got a text today about it, have you ever heard of this company? And I'm, and I'm going to have to text her back and be like, you don't know who you're getting. Yeah. It's not really a local company. Like, they are all over the country and you don't really, know what you're getting. The quality is not there. But that's really it in terms of the vendor side. But I know there's a lot more that happened behind the scenes before we even get to like the selection of wedding vendors.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I'm seeing it now too, about credit, because so much creativity goes into the wedding day in terms of the vendors that show up. Mm-hmm. And I'm always a proponent of just telling brides, if you really want to help your vendors, is just to give them credit during your wedding, of this, so-and-so did the floral, so-and-so did the photography, and just making sure that everybody's kind of getting a moment to contribute and feel acknowledged. But yeah, my story is a little off the beaten path, obviously went through a really big legal conflict, and it started from a contract I had signed at a young age. And, I think a lot of times when you're just young and you're excited and eager, you kind of mistake opportunity for safety. Mm-hmm. And they're totally different things. And not wanting to miss out on that big opportunity, that big chance, being afraid to push back on certain things or ask those really tough questions that you should ask, and just relating to the naivety of it all, because I'm just somebody that had to really learn the long, hard way. And now that I'm on the other side of it, and I went through the whole legal battle and got lucky because there was a moment we went into bankruptcy court, and it really shifted the landscape, and allowed me to purchase my IP back. Mm-hmm. And stay in the game when I had no money left. It's a very unique journey that I was on. It was also very specific. Right. I just want to be able to give good advice on the tail end, and just sharing my experience, but also not making creators paranoid. Yeah. I want to give them power, in knowing that so many industries are romanticized. And there's some really beautiful components, of course, to the wedding industry, but there's also certain obscurities, right, of power, and where the shift is and where the ownership is. And so just knowledge is power, and knowing what you're getting into and having those really tough conversations up front. And with Julia, like trying to bridge the gap here with vendors, when you're a bride, Sarah, interviewing, for who's going to do your venue, who's going to do your flowers, who's going to do XYZ, it's just really nice to have those honest conversations up front and understanding the expectations and, what things are costing at face value, and not that there's going to be tack on cost later, or, and it's all a negotiation. Yeah. And so it's important to know that while everything is based out of love and sentimental value and the dream, there are going to be contracts, there are going to be these difficult conversations, and they all do kind of work hand in hand. Not that one has to overshadow the other, but it's just the reality of the duality in things like this.
Yeah. Can I ask when you came up with the idea for A Girl You Might Know Foundation? Because I think that a lot of people would go through the legal battle that you went through and live to tell about it, of course, but maybe not take the next step and help others. And obviously that's why I'm so attracted to your story and why I'm so honored to have you on the podcast. When did you think of this idea, and what were the steps you took to make it happen, on top of course, designing your brand again?
Oh, thank you so much. It came out of a problem, really, because I felt like I projectiled my issues, out into the world, especially in the thick of my lawsuit, when I really had a hard time managing everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it just made me realize that more resources and support are needed. And I was so lucky to have this community rally around me and a public court that was very much championing for me to come out of this.
Yeah.
And so many people don't have that, you know, or they don't have the financial resources, which I was lucky to have lawyers that stayed on, that I wasn't paying, you know, and not everybody gets that. You'd have to, what would you do in that situation? You can't defend yourself, you know? And so the foundation was really created as a solution in let's provide more knowledge. Let's connect people to pro bono and low bono advocacy and legal counsel. Let's also share case studies and general knowledge about the industry itself with the underbelly of, you know, fashion, influencing, branding, entrepreneurship, all these things that you know, don't think about and don't know when you're on one side of the equation. Maybe you're just a creator, or maybe you're really good at certain things, but the other stuff kind of falls by the wayside. And sometimes that's where you get taken advantage of. So the foundation is really supposed to be a resource more than anything. And I'm so grateful for it, but it is a nonprofit is a business in itself, you know, so the attention to detail and paying attention to where you're making impact, all that stuff is super important. You know, it's not a monetary thing. It's more of a, are we making a difference with this? And is it a positive thing?
Yep.
Love it.
Yeah. I love that too. I'm so glad that it exists. I also want to talk about inclusivity a little bit. I feel like the fashion industry in general, even beyond the wedding industry, like does have a long way to go with inclusivity. And we celebrate, and then I think people think like, oh, we're getting somewhere, but really I feel like we're not getting very far. Where do you guys think the wedding industry is still lacking when it comes to inclusivity? It could be other wedding dress designers, Hayley, that you see. Of course, you don't have to name names. It could be anything from like wedding shoes to makeup. If you could make one aspect of wedding planning more inclusive, what would it be?
I feel sizing comes to mind right away, just because it's a bit of a buzzword at times. You know, it can be something that's phrased as like a PR stunt or a campaign. And in reality, inclusivity is just about measurement infrastructure. And it's imperative, you know, not going off of some antiquated measuring chart. You know, when you think about like a dress size, it's technically a made up number.
Yeah.
That's just a way to categorize your measurements. So it doesn't necessarily have to be another number, nor does it even need to be increasing. It's just a way for on the back end of production to know what pattern it's cutting, right? And so for me, I tried to shapeshift that a bit and say, we don't even need dress sizes. We just need your measurements. That's it. Which I think kind of removes that idea that we have to be doing tradition out of the sake of this is how it's been done forever, so this is why we should continue doing it. And so I don't really believe in that. I also think if it costs more to be included, it's not inclusion. So in some cases there are like size fees, which I think is kind of an oxymoron in itself. So I would say that would be my take, but I'm curious Julia's take too on the vendor side of things.
Yeah. So when I think of inclusivity in the wedding industry, my brain goes in a completely different direction.
Okay.
I think more about like same-sex couples and inclusivity in terms of, you know, being willing to service couples that are same-sex. And I think the fact that I am even having this conversation in 2026 is it still infuriates me, honestly. And I had several couples in 2025 that were just so fun to work with. And they were full service couples. And unfortunately, I had to be careful with who I recommended to them because, again, your wedding is a reflection of you. And it's important to make sure that your vendor team support you and your love and your story. And unfortunately, there are still vendors. I mean, I live in the South now, so it has even farther to go than when I lived in Connecticut. But, you know, the fact that I had to think about that at all is showing that there's still a long way that we have to go. But yeah, one of the additional layers that we had to think about when planning these weddings is the vendor team going to be supportive of this wedding? And I have to make sure that the vendors were inclusive prior to even making those recommendations. So yeah, that's where my brain goes when I'm thinking about inclusivity in the industry. And I do think it's a reflection of the country as a whole. because I do think that, you know, for us, it's more about like the vendors that are out there who are people living in America that have those kinds of views. So I'm grateful that I have plenty of vendor partners that I love as human beings that share the same moral compass that I do, that I know I can rely on. But unfortunately, it's not widespan enough.
Yes. I think that that's very well said. And I also think that that makes you a great planner, that you're thinking like that, because I'm sure there are so many planners who are not. So
I've actually had people say to me, you know, you shouldn't be sharing that you're, you know, I forget what post it was, but they came out
inclusive.
with it was something about like the LGBTQ community had a win, and it was like I shared it on Instagram, and someone actually had the audacity to say to me like, you might lose clients by sharing that you support same-sex marriage. And I'm like, I support marriage and I don't care who it is. Like, I support love, and it doesn't matter to me who the couple is. They should be allowed to celebrate their love for each other. And if that's going to turn off a couple from hiring me because my views are not the same as theirs, then that's fine. Like, I don't want to work with you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
We are not in the business to alienate people, at least from my perspective. You know, I just want people to feel good and feel like they can be themselves. So it's nice to have shared value when you're selecting vendors and thinking about the products you're wearing and what it represents beyond just something tangible. So
100%.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I made that video all the way back about your dresses, Hayley. And it was, you know, don't buy Hayley Paige, because I wanted brides to understand that their purchasing decisions have an impact, you know, and you think you might be supporting this amazing designer, but you're actually not. You know, and so I'm all about educating, you know, my couples on all the things and making sure that they know what those decisions really, you know, represent.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that's so great. And I love how full circle this moment is.
I do, I'll be honest, I do cringe watching that video back just because like, I feel like every time you look at content of yourself, like,
of course.
I'm a different person now. Like, I feel like, Sarah, you and I had this conversation because, like, your podcast has been so long standing that I watched your first episode not too long ago, Sarah, and I was like, this is great, but I can imagine you, like, cringing watching it back.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's pretty natural to, like, cringe at things that you've done in the past. Obviously, I stand by everything I said, but obviously, like, watching it back, I'm just like, yeah, I would have had the lighting a little different, would have had a little bit more of a tan, like, I don't know.
Same girl.
Totally. But that's what we do, right? Like, that's what I do for a living. And like, I even have to like teach my team members at Pop Sugar this, like, if you're nervous to speak to the camera, like, this is social media. This is going to be gone and you're not going to think about it again. Yes, it's the internet, but like, I don't know. Everyone else is doing it out there. You just have to kind of like bite the bullet sometimes and cringe at yourself. Yeah. But I don't want to keep you guys too much longer, but I do want to just finish on a couple of fun questions. We'll see what we get to. But I think the first one that I just want to ask is if you could like rewrite one bridal rule, what would it be?
So I have some strong opinions in general, but I think etiquette is stupid. So I actually throw all of etiquette out the window. I know that's like not the question, but I don't think rules belong in the wedding industry. I think that's a great way to frame it. Rules do not belong in the wedding industry. Like, the wedding industry should really be about the couple, and that is going to be so unique. So I love when my couples embrace that and they're willing to do things that are authentically themselves. For example, some of the rules that I don't think need to exist, but are okay if you want them to. Who walks you down the aisle, right?
Right.
It doesn't have to be dad.
Mm-hmm.
If you are not that close to your father, walk yourself down. Have your mother walk you down. Have a really close friend walk you down. You can dance down the aisle. You can prance down the aisle. Like, it doesn't matter, right? Like, however you want to have that moment is fine. Like, it doesn't have to be what everyone tells you to do. You know, even like the dances, like, you don't have to have, you know, a father-daughter dance, or you don't have to have a mother-son dance, or you don't have to even have a first dance. Who cares what the timeline says? Who cares what the order of events says? Like, screw the rules. Like, but I just don't really believe in rules in the wedding industry.
I'm with you.
I would double down on that. Actually, I'd say tradition is just a reference.
Yep.
You know, it's not a rule book. it helps with decision making, especially if you're somebody that feels overwhelmed.
Yes.
There's so much, like, oh, I like that, I don't like that, but I would share that sentiment.
I totally agree. I want to just ask one more question because actually this was Julia's question for you, Hayley, that she sent to me. And I just think it's so great because you are a designer who has honestly become a little bit of an influencer, probably because of your personality and who you are. I feel like there are so many designer brands, wedding dress brands that like we don't really know the designer behind the wedding dress. We don't really know much about them. You share. And I think it like takes your brand to the next level. How does it feel that you have amassed this following who have become fans not just of your brand but of you? And if they buy your dress, they have like a piece of you on their wedding day and they look at you as a fan.
It's so meaningful to have the connection that feels like a friendship almost first. And I remember when I first started out, there was a side of me that just took on this accountability of, okay, this is a really big deal that somebody is choosing a dress that you designed. You're the reason, like this girl is the reason I'm here. She's the reason I have a job and I have a purpose. Yeah. And so I've always really just coveted that connection and just feeling like it's a real form of communication. I also just think because I've had the journey I've had and I've really been kind of knocked off my feet a couple times, that with that comes a lot of just humility and knowing that it might not always be like this, and so to really just never take it for granted and always feel gratitude with the value I'm bringing. So I would say that first and foremost. And now that I've kind of rebranded and relaunched, and I'm starting over essentially, even with my pattern book and my dressography, I like to call it, instead of my discography.
Love it.
It feels like I'm a new designer on the block in some senses at times. And so because of that, I'm really here to grow and just feel like we're making a real connection here, first and foremost. So I think that's important. That's how I've kind of approached my design brain and aesthetic.
Totally. I love that. Thank you so much for joining my conversation with Hayley and Julia. I hope you learned so much about the wedding industry, so much about wedding dresses in general, the importance of protecting your name and paying attention to contracts as a young artist. Hayley has done so much for young artists, young designers. If you didn't follow Julia and Hayley already, I hope you do now. We'll see you next time. Bye.